Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome to Mobilize Japan. We have training Tuesdays every Tuesday, and every Friday we have Mobilize Japan's Missions Prayer Friday, and every Saturday we have a virtual mission trip where we do outreach, partner with our partners in Japan. So if this is your first time joining us, we're very happy for you to join us. If this is your, I think, sixth time joining us, we're glad that you've been part of us for so many weeks. Hopefully it's been a blessing for all of us. I can say it for myself. I've really enjoyed all the different people who have been sharing and training us. So today, we have the IMB from Kobe sharing with us. We have Josiah and we have Kacie. So hopefully that you guys will be able to be, I don't see you guys. Let's see if you guys can come in and introduce yourselves. Hi, Kacie. Hi, Josiah.
Hello.
Hey, I know not a lot about you. I just see your names that you guys say you're IMB Kobe. Can you guys give us short introductions for yourselves?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Josiah. I'm an IMB journeyman. So that's a 2-year midterm commitment. I've been here in Kobe since March of last year, so about almost a year and a half. I work here on the west side of Kobe. Kobe is like super long. So there's like the downtown area on one side. I'm on the other side in a place called Gakuen Toshi, which has 7 different universities with about 15,000 total students just in this small part of the city. So I work in various places around Kobe with Kobe team and the universities around here.
And my name is Kacie, and I am in Tokyo right now, actually. I moved here last January, and I'll be here until October, and then next summer I'm going to move and join the Kobe team. So right now I'm doing the same job that Josiah described. That's 2 years, but I'm moving back to be a career missionary for 3 or 4 more years down in Kobe.
Oh yeah, so your heart is Kobe right now because you're preparing yourself for that.
Exactly.
Great. So I heard one of you guys is leading our session first. Who would it be? Josiah?
That'd be me.
Great. Take it away.
All right, bring that up. All right, so today, or with the Training Tuesday, we're going to be doing Japanese university culture and student ministry. Like I said, I'm in an area of Kobe with lots of students. Kacie will tell you more later. She also works significantly with students in Tokyo. And so we thought we'd give an overview of what Japanese university culture looks like overall, because it's not all exactly the same as Japanese culture in general, which you might have learned in previous sessions of this virtual mission trip. So I'm going to take it away first with kind of Japanese university culture 101. So with the bit of research that I did for this, there are in all of Japan, there's 795 universities in Japan, in the 47 prefectures. And this is 2.92 million students, which is a lot of students. But these universities are broken up into 3 different categories. That's national universities, public universities, and private universities. 86 of these are national universities. These are generally like the highest quality. They're funded by the government. And like these are the cream of the crop and the best of the best. Then there's the public universities. There's 94 of those. And these are also pretty highly regarded, not as much as the national universities. And we'll get to this in a minute, but whether it's a national, public, or private university is actually very important. And then finally, there's 615 private universities. That's the bulk of them, but these are usually smaller universities, smaller faculty and staff, or sometimes they have a very specific university focus for the students that are going to these private universities. So I kind of threw that number out there, 2.92 million students, but nobody can really conceptualize big numbers like that, at least I can't. But how many students is 2.92 million? So there are some pretty big cities in Japan, but out of the 10 largest cities in Japan, the Japanese student population nationwide is larger than 8 of these. So like there are more students in Japan than there are people in Osaka. There are more students in Japan than there are people in Kobe. And to put this in more American terms, there are more college students in Japan than there are people in the states of Maine and New Hampshire put together. Like this is a lot of people that we're talking about that are college students in Japan. And because the Japanese population isn't increasing very much, this number has stayed pretty constant over the past decade or so. But we've got almost 3 million college students in this country. So despite not being compulsory, high school is not compulsory in Japan, but 96% of children will go all the way through high school. And those who want to continue after that, you've got to find a college. You need to find somewhere to do your education after that. And how you get into college, it's not just an application process. You've got to do entrance exams. These are pretty much the heart and soul of a senior high school student. And absolutely everything rides on these test scores. So senior high school students will regularly go to cram schools so that they can learn everything that they need to know to pass entrance exams. Just like I'm sure you all know about cramming. I certainly did. For tests in college, you don't remember any of that information that you crammed for the night before the test, and neither do Japanese high schoolers. As soon as they're done with it, it's brain dumped. And the name of the university you go to is much more important than what you want to major in. This is where that difference between national public and private universities comes in, because several of the national universities, these are among the best in Japan. They have a really high bar for entry with their entrance exams. I've met a lot of students in just my year and change of ministry, and I can't count how many times I'm talking to a student and I'll ask them, what's your major and what kind of job you want to get? And those two questions will get completely different answers. Like it's surprised me that really a lot of students don't really care that much about their major. They're just going to do something that interests them, and it has little to nothing to do with what kind of job they want to get afterwards. And then finally, you really don't want to fail entrance exams, because your reputation as a person, as a student, and to an extent your family's reputation too, is on the line. You might have learned in a previous virtual mission trip training session about Japanese culture, how it's rooted in honor and shame dynamics in a very different way than we see things in the West. So your face, how you look before others, is, especially your parents, is of paramount importance. Plus, entrance exams are expensive. They can cost as much as $400 US just to sit in the exam. And if you have to travel away from your hometown, it can be up to $2,500. That's the average, just to go to this university, to stay in a hotel, to take the exam. That's the average, is $2,500. That's nothing to sneeze at. And you really don't want to go home from that having failed the exam because you didn't study hard enough, because you didn't do well enough. So don't fail entrance exams. You really want to get in. So from elementary school all the way through high school, Japanese students and the culture in general is highly rigid and structured. Everything from your behavior, your study methods, your club activities. There is one correct way to do everything. And you even got in some elementary, middle, high schools, black rules, they call them in Japanese, that govern even like the appearance of students, how you can cut your hair, what you can and can't wear. And some places even have black rules that are particularly strict on girls, but not the male students. Fortunately, that kind of discriminatory culture is changing little by little these days. But I talk about this rigidness and this structured life because it's such a stark contrast to college culture in Japan. Because as soon as you graduate high school, a Japanese young adult, they can dye their hair, they can wear interesting fashion instead of the same school uniform every single day. They can do pretty much whatever they want within reason. And despite the Japanese group-based culture, college students are much more free to express themselves in an individualistic way during their years in university. And so for that reason, some people have called college in Japan the spring break of life, because once a student actually makes it into university, once you pass your entrance exams, you're on easy street for the next 3 years until your senior year. Most classes, I've heard from a lot of students, most classes are not very difficult at all. Outside of specialized tracks like engineering, the majority of students can pretty easily coast through with little effort on their part, and they can just enjoy their life. And traditional classes will tend to be a simple lecture format. The professor talks and that's all. So you don't really have to pay that much attention. And again, with the group culture, unless the professor is someone who fosters discussion and debate, most students aren't going to weigh in on anything unless they're asked specifically by the professor, what do you think about this? And so for that reason, if the teacher is not interesting, it's common to sleep in class. I have at least 2 different friends. They've told me, oh yeah, I sleep in class. It's no big deal. I pass my classes, I pass my tests. I don't really need to pay attention in class. I'll just worry about it later. So in that sense, it's kind of a strict contrast to some of the universities, or a lot of the universities in the US, where college is like, it's a super big deal and you've got to study a lot in order, if you're going to pass some teachers. So in finance and family, students in Japan usually will either live with their family or they'll live alone. There isn't really that dorm culture where you've got roommates or you've got students nearby all the time. Plus, it's common to live with family anyway in Japan. Even after graduation, not everyone can afford an apartment, and not everybody wants to leave their family, or they accept their responsibility as a continued part of their family. But plus, traditionally, college is paid for by your family in about 80% of cases in Japan. So, like, you're accepting responsibility. Of course, you're gonna at least consider living with your family because they've done so much for you and you don't want to let them down. However, many students will also get a part-time job, arubaito, as it's called in Japanese. They want some personal cash, petty cash, if their family doesn't give them allowance or something like that. So you go through university in Japan, you've got 3 years of pretty chill stuff. But then you get to your last year or your last semester, and that last part of university is full of job hunting activities, known as shushoku katsudo, looking for work. That's resumes, interviews, and then this is also your last opportunity to live it up before you enter the working world. So as these students are working on their resumes, again, as we said before, the name of the university on your resume is extremely important. And for some companies, it's more important than anything else that you've got. It's more important than your grades, more important than your extracurriculars, or pretty much any other skills. In this name-based culture, the question is, oh, you went to this university, and then you're basically hired on the spot because it was a good university. What students will be wary of is Black companies. This may have also come up in a previous training. You might have heard about Black companies. If you haven't, these are companies that are known for abusing their employees through long hours, mandatory overtime, strong recommendations against vacation or any kind of leisure. Like these are not good places to work. Very exploitative. And as long as a student knows about it, a self-aware student is going to avoid taking a job with a Black company. But in the one place, data is not always easy to find on whether a company is Black or not. This is getting easier in the internet age where information is much easier to come by, but not all Black companies are publicly exposed as Black companies by the government or some other agency. And then second, sometimes unfortunately, sometimes you just don't have a choice that XYZ Black company is your only option for a job, and it's that or nothing, and you need a job. But then as soon as you graduate, it's extreme business from here on out. Much of the freedom that a student had in their college years is going to be rescinded for suits, ties, other dress wear, depends on your job. There are people who in Japan who get to do something that they love, who get to do something interesting, who maybe don't have to wear a suit every day, but that's not the average. As I'm standing around people watching in Sanomiya, the downtown area of Kobe, probably the single most common outfit that I see isn't even a school uniform. It's just your average suit, blue or black, white shirt, tie. And so many people are wearing just that exact outfit because that's business. But back to college. The atmosphere in Japanese colleges is generally pretty carefree, but nobody's life is perfect, however attractive it appears to someone looking in from the outside. As in the rest of the country of Japan, in Japanese universities, depression and suicide and other mental health issues are often left untreated, even in this vulnerable time where people are becoming adults trying to put together an identity for themselves. And this is a culture that encourages self-sufficiency, playing your cards close to your chest and not letting anyone in on your struggles, because that's inconvenient. You don't want to inconvenience someone with your issues. You don't want to bring the mood down in your friend group by telling them something that you've had a problem with recently. What you're supposed to do is just keep going and enduring, because you can figure this out on your own. Even for easy college classes, people who might be a perfectionist and worry about their grades, even though they're pretty sure to succeed, if they're operating in a mindset where their value as a human is based on their performance, because that's also very common here. But each and every one of these struggles, and any other struggle that you can possibly think of, is a potential bridge to the gospel. If you've built a relationship with a Japanese student, as you earn their trust, they're going to be, as you are open with them, they will be more open to you. Whether it's scripture directly or a personal testimony of the faithfulness and power of Christ, this is something that you can bring into their life to show them, no, your value as a human is not based on your performance. No, like, you can struggle with these mental health issues. These are problems caused by sin in the world, and Jesus is stronger than that. But basically, if there's one thing among all of the statistics and university culture stuff that I would want you guys here at the mission trip to take away from this, is that in Japanese university, this is the prime time for the gospel, because Japanese young people, they're extremely busy all the way through high school. They've got club activities, they've got homework, they've got other commitments. And then as soon as they leave college, they're extremely busy as soon as they enter the workforce. This has shown up so many times for me, where it's really hard to hang out with my friends who are already graduated, because they work all the time and they don't get days off very often. But this is the perfect time. These 3-4 years of college, this is the perfect time to introduce Japanese young people to Jesus in this country where more than 90% of Japanese people have never even heard of Jesus. Even in their spring break of life, they have physical, emotional, spiritual problems that the world cannot fix. And as we as Christians know, the root of these problems is sin. It's the shame of a shattered relationship with God. In university, students are learning new ideas, they're gaining knowledge at a super rapid pace. Their eyes and their minds are opening, and as their world grows larger, it brings many to a place of openness to the good news. Thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over now to Kacie. I've given kind of a general overview of what college in Japan looks like. Kacie is going to drill down a bit more into some of the specifics of what's going on exactly right now in Kobe, in Tokyo, in Japan in general. So you can take it away, Kacie.
Cool, thanks, Josiah. So yeah, I'm just gonna pick up where he left off and talk a little bit about how we take all of the information that we just got and we start to apply it to doing ministry here on the ground in both Tokyo and in Kobe. And so something that's really interesting that we learned about students in working here is that like Gen Z in particular is something that we found out we need to learn about. And I'm not sure what the age group is of this group because everybody's cameras are off, but Gen Z actually has more in common with other Gen Zers across the world than they do with people from their same culture, but different generations. So that has really affected the way that we do ministry and reach out, and also the way that we understand our college student friends and what matters to them, where they get their values from. And so in many ways, this is a really cool advantage because you have more in common. If you're a Gen Zer, you have more in common with these students than ever before. Like you can come from America and still bond over the same thing because our world is now so interconnected. And in another positive note, there's so many doors to the gospel that have been opened because of Gen Z's like connectedness to the rest of the world. They like, for example, it used to be, and still kind of is, but a pretty big problem that the older Japanese generation was so adamant about protecting Japanese culture that they weren't open to any other ideas. But with more openness to different ways of thinking, there's also an opportunity for the gospel to be shared and for people's hearts to be more open. But at the same time, there are different challenges that come with it, because just like we have challenges in the West with the Gen Z and like unique challenges, those are also carrying over into Japan. So I have friends that are part of college clubs that are very focused on social justice, but in a way that is not honoring to the gospel, in a way that's not looking to the Bible for the solution. And so there's a lot, just different spiritual obstacles that come up as a result of that, with all of the ideas carrying over from the West, not just the good ones, but the not as God glorifying ones as well. And so as we start to look to build relationships with these students, I wanted to share a little bit. You might have heard this in other trainings too, but building relationships with Japanese people just takes time and investment. And so this little graph here, someone showed me when I first moved here, and it was really helpful for me because I would say like I'm a relatively reserved American. Like I don't open up super easily, but compared to a Japanese people or a Japanese person, it's very different. Like as Josiah shared, it's considered shameful to open up about yourself, and like you should gambare, like you should fight and get over it and not be a burden to other people. So it takes a really long time for them to feel comfortable and to feel safe being able to open up. And so this slide is kind of just an encouragement in part to say, like, you might be sharing with your Japanese friend and feel like, wow, this person knows my whole life story. This is getting like really personal, and they're just talking about cheeseburgers. Like I'm not getting anything out of them. But just know, like, persevere. It takes time, and probably these Japanese friends haven't had someone pour into them so intentionally, and so like take the time to get to know them and care about them and ask what's really going on with them. So it's something they want, they just haven't experienced or don't know how to handle because it's not common. So it's something to keep in mind as we reach out. And it also influences the way that we reach out to students, because we want to have multiple touches with them so that we can build relationships, to be constantly building more and more trust over time through doing things throughout the week, through doing things like seeker services or having like just introductions to spiritual conversations at English corners and things like that. And in general, just life on life, spending time with friends, going to get cheeseburgers, and just doing things that friends would do. And one interesting thing about translating ministry to Japan is that, so we're here on a religious visa, and Japan is an open country, but on college campuses, for the most part, I think anyways, proselytizing on campus is not allowed. And so if we're going to go on campus, we have to have a legitimate reason to be there. We can't just go pass out tracts. And there's also an issue that in the past with Japan, I'm not sure if you've heard this in other trainings yet or not, but there's a really broken history of cults and predatory religious groups. And so a while back in the Tokyo area, there was one really prominent religious group that set off gas in trains or something, and like several people died. So people's image of religion is really skewed and broken. And so when we're reaching out to students, they already have a hesitation towards Christian or religious groups. So we need something to establish legitimacy and to make us trustworthy. And so some of the ways that we've done that is, one of them was a really huge answer to prayer, because we were just feeling like, how do we get in with these students, especially during COVID when no one's meeting in person. But we ended up meeting a girl who was really passionate about cultural exchange. And she invited us into her university circle, which is usually only for students, but she invited us to come. And like, we've been able to share at Christmas time because we celebrate Christmas very differently. So she asked us to present. And so, yeah, just being able to have like this little logo here that you see on the screen and say, this is what I'm a part of, this is what I do, this is a legitimate university club, helps so much with people not feeling like, oh, who are these sketchy foreigners who are trying to get me to join their thing? But it's like, this is a real group and this is where friends meet. And on the other hand, we created an NPO, an NGO, a nonprofit organization. And so in Kobe, they have something too, but ours in Tokyo is called the Story House. And like, even just having an Instagram to show like, we're legit, this is what we do, like a social media presence in general to legitimize what we are doing, it makes it more comfortable for people to join. It makes us more trustworthy for people to join in on what we're doing. And so when we start reaching out to people, we sort of utilize a funnel. And so the widespread invitations and then slowly trickling down to see who's more and more interested. So some of the things that we do for the widespread invitations are things like 5-minute English. So we'll take these little posters and go out near the station or heavily trafficked areas and just say, hey, anyone want to practice English? And it takes some courage for people to come up, but once more people start coming up, more and more people start coming up, and it's been a great way to be able to meet people and start inviting them to other events. And holidays are a really great opportunity too, especially because we get the advantage of being, fun Americans who have different holiday celebrations. So it's an easy invite and something people are generally interested in, especially with Christmas. Like, Christmas in Japan is celebrated so differently. They eat fried chicken and they treat it kind of like Valentine's Day, like it's a very romantic holiday. So a lot of times if your friends are single, they don't have any plans on Christmas Day or around Christmas time. And so it's a great time to be able to reach out to them and share the story and the message of Christmas. And as I've kind of mentioned, just in general, any kind of international exchange group is very attractive and interesting to people. And it's a good way to bring people in and start filtering, like, as you share bits of truth, to see like, oh, who's open to this and who hears Christianity and is just freaked out and leaves. Like, it's a good way to see who God is preparing and who we could move forward with. And so as we continue down our funnel, some of the ways that we go deeper are things like seeker services. And so it's like not gentle worship, but like a service that's for people who are curious and open, but maybe don't know very much. And I think having this kind of structured outline is really helpful for the Japanese students, because as Josiah mentioned, like, debate culture and sharing your opinion just isn't really fostered in the education system or just in the general culture here. So to be able to just sit and listen rather than saying like, oh, what do you think about this? Or let's read this and think, what do you think? Like, they might have zero opinions or like just it's the first time they're ever hearing it, so they're not sure how to react. So to have a set program where people can just sit and listen and take in all the information and process it is really helpful for helping Japanese people feel at ease in these events. And another way is just bringing up, I mentioned this a little bit before, but spiritual themes at conversation groups. So like in Kobe, they have the English Cafe, and just having questions like, oh, what's your dream for the future? Or what have you been learning from COVID? Or just generalized enough questions, but that can lead to you to begin to share like, oh, this is what I've learned that God has been teaching me during COVID, and just little steps along the way that make it more conducive to having spiritual conversations and conducive to sharing with those friends. And like I mentioned before, just really like loving on them and getting to know them. Like, I have a friend here who I saw, two friends, they're friends with each other, and they hadn't seen each other for over a year, and they acted like it was very normal. Like, friendship and life on life just isn't nearly as common here. So to like invest that deeply and to love your friends that well really demonstrates the love of God to them in a way they have no experience with. So it's a really powerful testimony just to love your friend like they're your friend. And so when you get to sharing, like, just any kind of spiritual truth, the gospel, anything leading towards that direction. Probably you've heard this in other trainings, but there's just a lot to untangle in Japan. So even if you just tell your friend, oh, God loves you, like, that's wonderful. God does love them. But God, like, the first question is, who is God? Because to them, God could be Mount Fuji, or God could be this shrine. Like, there are several gods. So the concept of God and the concept of a God with a personality and a relational God isn't something that they're used to. And so some of the ways that you can start untangling those knots when you're talking with your Japanese friends is, my language teacher advised me, like, when I begin my prayers, to use descriptive prayers or descriptive titles for gods, rather than just saying God, but saying like loving Father God, or Creator God, or just adding little adjectives along the way to show, like, it kind of captures their attention, because they usually just say God, 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 God. But to explain who God is while you're praying, and just sprinkle those little seeds as you pray. And also, my teacher has shared with me that they usually always refer to God in the third person. So when you refer to God, like, in the second person, like, you're directly speaking to God in prayer, that makes a difference too. To say, God, you love us, thank you, da, 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 da. Like, even just being intentional about using the word you in prayer rather than it, they, God, shows that there's a relationship there, and it's different than the kind of deity that they're used to. And the second note is love, like, God, okay, who's God? And then what is love? Because in the Japanese language, there are two words for love. There's daisuki and aisuru. And like, probably you daisuki ice cream. You love ice cream, and you can use it for anything. And it's like a more common word, but aisuru is very rare. It'd be super weird if you said that you aisuru ice cream. You wouldn't say that. And so, and like, it's a deep expression of love, but it's not even really commonly used in families. So just the idea of being outwardly expressive of affection is very different. And so just unpacking what love is and what love looks like, and loving your friends, helps them to kind of start understanding what it means to say that a God in heaven loves them and desires a relationship with them. And finally, you, who is God? What is love? And who am I? And as Josiah kind of mentioned, that's something that is on the forefront of college students' minds. Like, they're finally getting to think, I've had my whole life mapped out to this point. Who do I want to be? I can dye my hair. I can wear different clothes. What does that mean for who I am? And so, again, as Josiah said, it's a prime time to start sharing with people about who they were created to be and who they were created to have a relationship with. And so, on a final note, as an encouragement, in Japan, I think that relationship building feels like it can take a long time. Sharing with your friends feels like it can take a long time. But there's a thermometer on here, because, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you hardly know anything about God, 10 being your God. No, not your God, sorry. Just you know a lot about God. In America, probably most people, like, at the very least, are like a 3 or 4. Like, maybe they have a really skewed perception of who God is, but they know that there is a cross and there is a Jesus, and Jesus is the Son. But in Japan, that scale, like, most people are at a -10. Like, they have zero conception of the God of the Bible. Maybe they've heard Jesus in school. And so, like, a huge part of our ministry is taking people from -10 to -9 to -8. And so it is a longer process, but those, like, moving someone along that has eternal value, and like really makes a difference in the hearts of these students. And like, so many of our friends here have been moved across that scale because of their times, like, with mission trip people, like volunteers, or with having studied abroad and met Christians there. Like, that makes such a big difference. So it's just my encouragement to you that whatever you're sharing with your friends is not being wasted. Even if you use you in prayer, and that's all you do when you share with a friend, is that you pray for your meal and you say, loving God, thank you for this food. Like, that is moving them along a scale that makes a difference, and it's like, those seeds won't go to waste. So that is my encouragement. And we wanted to take a little bit of time to show, like, what it looks like, very tangibly speaking, how we do ministry here in Japan, and how you could join us in the future potentially. And so some of the things that we do here in Tokyo, we partner with a local church that has a lot of college students. And so I talked a little bit about the seeker service, but it's just, we play games, we do a little bit of bilingual games because it's fun to try to speak English. And then someone will share their testimony, and then we'll sing some worship songs and have a discussion at the end. And church members invite their friends, and we distribute flyers at the dorms. So the dorms are off campus, and we can do stuff with dorms generally. And so we've had volunteer teams come and share testimonies at this, and volunteer teams help us to meet these people. Or if you're looking to do something in your area, just having that, like I mentioned before, having a structure that people can follow and expect can help them to feel more at ease when they're at your events. And for our planting, Tokyo is also trying to church plant right now at a local university here. And so some of the things that we're doing for that is there's an online Japanese cafe, which is a language exchange group. And so anyone's welcome to join. We have people from Hong Kong and Taiwan and all over the world that join. And it's really great for practicing Japanese. So if you want to work on your Japanese, you're welcome to join. But there's also meetups online, like the website meetup.com, where you can join language calls or just join. Sorry, I think the construction outside is kind of loud. You can join and start meeting with Japanese people virtually. And other things that we're doing for the church plant is meeting up weekly with friends. So we have like this list of coffee shops we want to go to. And like I said, it's just hitting on that life on life, building relationships. So I don't know, whatever city you're in, if you have fun, like bucket list things you want to try, that you can just invite people into those regular patterns, even if they can't come every week, just to be able to expect, oh, Wednesdays are the days that they do this fun thing. It's a really great way to start inviting Japanese people into your life. And Kobe.
Yeah, so Casey's already covered a lot of that, and I just wanted to add a couple extra notes for related to some of the stuff that we're doing in Kobe, which, as Casey already mentioned, we've got international events, we've got parties where we're bringing people together to just have fun, and then also hear a message related to the gospel. We'll go out for holiday gatherings. We've got cafes, English and Korean, so kind of that whole spectrum of international vibe, where we're just trying to get into deeper discussions and try and break out of that just listening culture a little bit, where while there are places for the seeker services, like Casey said, with a very clear program, is some of the stuff that we're doing in these cafes is trying to break out of that a little bit to where they can discuss and think, like, why do I believe XYZ? And why does this person say that they believe in Jesus? What is the point of that? And how has Jesus changed them, is what they're saying. But then again, over and over again, we want to stress that life together is that most important thing. Building that relationship, spending the time with people, no matter what it takes. I mentioned before, like, it's hard sometimes for me to meet my friends who are in the workforce, but that means that I treasure the time that I spend with them. And I spend a lot of time praying, God, please arrange circumstances so that I can meet my friend. And it also really puts into perspective that that verse in scripture that says, make the most of every opportunity, because we only have so much time with them, however long we're in Japan or however long they have in the same town that we're in. Everything goes back to trusting God, trusting that he's going to bring fruit forth in his time. And most of what's left to us is just to be faithful in the little things, so that we can be faithful in the bigger things. But that's some stuff that that you can be thinking about right now if you're thinking about coming to Japan, or if you're thinking about working with international students right where you are. I know that IMB Tokyo is going to be doing that next week. So you get a whole training from them on how you can interact with international exchange students, like right now, without coming to Japan. But I think that's pretty much all from us. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to both of us. This has been a great training. I hope this has been helpful for you guys as you plan, listen to God and where he's leading you.
Thank you guys so much. Right now we'll be having a time of breakout sessions. So Some of you lucky people will be in the rooms that they will be in. And for the rest of us, we'll all have time where right now the slide will show up some of the questions you may be having. Breakout time will be for about 15 minutes, where you get to share some of the things you might have learned, something that stood out to you, maybe share and get to know each other better. As a quote unquote virtual mission trip, we do like people to get to know each other better, people that you can pray alongside with, people that you might be able to apply for a mission agency together. And then if you have time, pray, but again, it's very short. And afterwards, we'll join you again in a time of Q&A. So we'll see you guys in 15 minutes. Welcome back from the breakout sessions. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys and to get to know some of the people in the virtual mission trip and also ask more questions, share what you've learned. I got to talk to someone else who's wanted to go to Japan for a short-term mission trip, but because of COVID, it's made it hard for her. So hopefully we can all go and serve together. And now we have Josiah and Casey joining us for a time of Q&A. If this is your first time joining us, it's actually not mic, but ask a question in the chat. Some people do want to type it, but I'll be reading chat and people will be able to ask the questions. I think we actually have a lot of questions. I need to go through the old ones. Let's see. But before we, oh yeah, we do have a start. So there was a question on what is a black company? It almost sounds like in the black means it's profitable, but can Josiah just really clarify a little bit again? Is it an evil company? Is it a legitimate company? Is it?
Yeah, so, and actually I saw someone kind of answered that question a little bit in the chat, but a black company is, but it's an exploitative company. Like they, it's long working hours, mandatory overtime, sometimes even unpaid overtime. Vacations not recommended. They just treat their employees really badly to the point that there is a Japanese word, like a single Japanese word that means death by overwork, because that's what a black company does to you. They work you so hard that you die, and they don't care.
Okay, so it's a legitimate company. It just the overwork.
Yes, it's a legitimate company. It's a legitimate company that probably shouldn't be considered legitimate because they do not treat them well.
Got it. Thank you.
But like the government, I think, has a list of known black companies. I don't know if they sanction them or anything like that. But then again, like with the internet now, like people can learn more about black companies. They can avoid the ones that are considered black, unless, like I said, sometimes they don't have any choice. Like that's their only job option.
But even the legitimate companies that are not black, do the salarymen go through this kind of similar experience?
Sometimes it is slowly getting a little bit better from what I understand, but still, like even in a non-black company, you, because of the way that group culture works, you really want to be always contributing to the company. And so if you're the one who goes home first or goes home early, like that's pretty shameful for you because you should be working harder than that. And if you're the one who takes vacation first, nobody wants to do that because then you're going to look like the slacker. So there is that element of some salarymen do go through something like that. And you can't even have death by overwork in a company that's not black if you're just working really hard because the company doesn't do anything about you are working too hard.
Yeah, like Toyota, people still commit suicide or overwork themselves because they work 140 hours a week at Toyota, a very legitimate company.
Yeah.
So Toyota, it works so hard. Imagine the black companies.
Yeah.
We have a question
like there
on...
are stories. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let's move on.
Oh yeah, we have a story on as a college student.
Sorry, I didn't get that. You were kind of cutting out.
Oh, I'll ask again if it didn't. Do students get internships at companies while they are college students? Still not hearing?
Do you know anything about that?
Oh.
I have a couple of friends who got an internship like their third or junior or senior year, I think. but I don't know how prevalent it is. I don't hear people talking about internships with as much gusto as they do here in America. There in America.
Same here. When I worked there for many years, they usually don't get internships.
Yeah.
Companies just want to hire you straight off the bat.
Mm.
We have a question about like international students. Like, how does studying in an American university affect their ability to get a job when they get back to Japan? Like, many of our friends study here and then go back to Japan. Is it a plus, a benefit for them when they go back?
It seems like, I mean, I only have like one or two friends that have that experience, but it seems like it's been really helpful for them. Like my friend who did that got a job at Mitsubishi or some like very commonly known Japanese big name company. So I think being able to speak English and have that international experience greatly benefits them. But I also have limited experience, so asterisk.
Yeah, and I would echo that as well. I also have limited experience, but from what I understand, like knowing English well enough is a big deal. I don't know if this is true or not, but I mean, it's possible that if you studied in the US, that would probably give you a much better shot at getting a good enough score on like the TOEIC English test that you would be able to easily get a job related to English or where you have to use English.
I can answer that question. I worked at Waseda top universities, talked with hundreds of students. They said it's actually harder. It is easier. If you get English, that helps you. But because they know that you studied abroad, they think you're not pure Japanese anymore. Would you adjust to our culture because you don't think like us anymore? So the Japanese who went abroad struggle, and they're actually more open to the gospel because now they're like, I don't like Japanese work hours and the work culture. Something is, I have to cut off a part of myself, like 4 years of myself to adjust back to Japanese culture. So there's a plus of English and the negative of the culture that they have to bring in.
So that goes back to that distinction between universities, whereas like if someone gets a good TOEIC score and they went to a prestigious university, they're going to get hired on the spot. Whereas the person who studied in America for 5 years and speaks like perfectly, they might not get considered.
Even that, yeah. Britt has a question that she wants to unmute herself. Britt, go ahead.
Yes, it's complicated to type, so I just thought I'd explain it. So Kacie, you were saying you were invited to a circle, and after you were invited, you were part of the circle. So I guess I just want to know what the policies are in terms of being invited to a circle or club and you're not a student of a university, and how can you join? Like, what was it just being invited just the one time and you're automatically part of it? And now I can say I'm part of this culture exchange circle, or was it you got invited and you got to sign up or something like that?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the university and their rules with circles too, and like the prestige of the university. If it's Waseda and they have this certain thing, or if it's the school and it's more open. But I also think my circumstance was very unique and a big answer to prayer, because actually the circle was formed by like our partner missionary. I don't know if you know Michio. Anyways. So she started, like, she was like the advisor to this group. And so it was through her that we got connected and invited in, and she kind of made us like core members in the group. And so we were automatically like embedded into the structure of the circle. So it's kind of a unique circle because typically if you're not a student, you don't join. Like when I've told people that I'm in a college circle, they think it's kind of weird, but I mean, maybe not weird, but surprising. And so I don't know that it's particularly common to have, like, I know that there's Christian circles on, like Waseda has an established Christian circle, but I think that's also kind of rare. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that answered my question, because I was like, when you were sharing the story, I was like, so she got invited and now she's part of the circle? Like, how did that happen? And also the fact that, yeah, my impression is that mostly students are part of circles and clubs. So I just thought it was unique and I wanted to know what it was. And so, yes, you did answer my question. Thank you.
I can answer that to you since I was a member of a circle, even though I was a missionary. It depends per circle. Certain ones are like, oh, you're not a student, you can't be part of us. Waseda Patty is like a conversation club. They're like, yeah, just pay us the 3,000 yen a year and you can be part, you get all the membership and everything. The International Student Fellowship also let me be part of it. So multiple ones, you just ask them and they would say, yes, you can join us, or no, you need to be a student. Because I actually asked, can I join your shooting circle, the shooting club, the competitive shooting? They're like, oh yeah, are you a student? I was like, no, then no, we can't help you. So just ask. And some, even if you're not a student, like I was helping out the WEF, which is the English Conversation Club in Waseda. I'm not an official member, but they wanted me to be part of it because I spoke English. So there's leeway even with that. So just ask, when you're in Japan, ask the president, the vice president, the secretary, be friends with different students, and they can let you in, or they can just put you on this periphery, helping them out. Great. We have a question that's for sharing. So someone's asking, like, if it's considered shameful to open up about what you're experiencing, how do Japanese people generally respond to you guys sharing your testimony?
That really depends on the person. So on the one hand, it can make things awkward for them depending on how vulnerable the testimony is. On the other hand, I'm not Japanese, so I have a pass to break some of those cultural norms in a good way. And that can be a really big step towards building that relationship that, hey, I'm willing to share this like really important part of who I am, of what's happened to me. So it can go either way.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Casey, go ahead. I was hoping you would share.
I was just gonna say, yeah, and I feel like I also kind of pace, I mean, like my pace is ahead of theirs, but I pace myself based on the depth of friendship I have with them. So like if it's a person I'm meeting for the first time, I'm not gonna be like, here's all my childhood struggles that led me to the Christ. Like that would just be kind of overwhelming for them. But like as I get to know them more, I'm sharing more and more. And obviously like more vulnerable than they're being, but not like two opposite sides of the spectrum that they're like, wow, this person's a whole lot and they're spilling their whole life to me. But I think like it can be really cool too. Like I mentioned in the training that like they're just not used to having people pour into them and invest in them like that. So I have a friend who like, she really struggles with mental health issues and she sees a counselor, and I found that out from someone else, I think. But like I told her about a time that I visited a counselor, and I feel like it was like, just like, she was like, oh, this is a whole new person that I can talk to. Like I feel safe with this person. And so I do think it opens a lot of doors, even if like they're not the one initiating it, to put it out there. Like they respond really well and feel a lot safer.
It's really helpful. I think it was true where you're saying if you guys share with each other, like in a group setting, rather than just even one-on-one, sharing more vulnerability, they would see like, oh, you are sharing, and then if you have a Japanese friend that's sharing, they're like, oh, it seems to be normal in this setting, this group. You guys all share about deeper topics. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'm gonna be asking you guys more questions. Let's see. Feel free to, if it's a difficult question, I guess you can unmute yourself. If not, feel free to type it in chat. I think, let's see. Oh, someone's asking, what is 5-minute English? How does it go? What do you guys do? Is it helpful for you guys?
Yes, I can take that. And we're actually going to talk about this more in detail on the Missions Prayer Friday when we go over our ministry more in detail. But basically, our goal, at least in Kobe, our goal with 5-minute English is to make connections quickly, because like we could do some big fancy marketing campaign online where we put up flyers everywhere all over the internet. But with 5-minute English, like we're holding signs saying, come talk to us in English, like just 5 minutes. And so it can be hard to get people to bring up the courage to actually come talk and practice their English. But once they do, you have a personal connection one-on-one right away. And our goal there is to invite them to an event in the future, whether that's International Party, English Cafe, something like that, where we can get them quickly, talk to them briefly, like if we have opportunities for spiritual conversations in 5 minutes, we'll do that. But really, we just want to bring the person in, invite them to an event. And it depends on the day. Like sometimes we get no people, sometimes we get 15 or 20 people showing up in an hour and a half time span. It just depends on who's on the street that day. But I think it's very useful. We get to meet lots of interesting people and have good conversations, even if they're just 5 minutes.
Casey, you've also done 5-minute English?
The Tokyo team has only done it like once or twice since I've been here. It's been a little bit tougher with the COVID in Tokyo.
Did
So,
you just come during COVID time?
yeah, I got here in January, so I had about a month of regular life.
Oh no, yeah. Well, that's hard. How has it been since, how was your ministry during COVID? What were you doing in Tokyo?
So we did a lot online. We did English related stuff actually, and just not 5-minute English. So that Instagram I was showing earlier, the Story House, like our kind of nonprofit that we run. We did online English corners where we would just have like guests from the States come in and share a testimony, but also teach English through it. So they would teach like, oh, this phrase, oh, that's my kind of vibe, and then try to use that phrase in their testimony, like, wow, Jesus was my kind of vibe. It was not that terrible, but like
I get it, yeah.
how we did it. So we did most stuff like just with friends we had already met online.
Great. We have another question about evangelism for both of you. What is one thing you've learned or you didn't know before regarding evangelism or the Japanese or some culture aspect during your journeyman term? What did you learn about, or what did you learn about evangelism?
I guess I'll go first. Probably the biggest one for me is talking about sin, because like I had heard a little bit about, oh, Japanese don't understand sin the same way as we do, but that didn't really become real until I actually talked to people and they didn't understand it. Like what is this? Like I've never been arrested for a crime. Like,
Yeah.
I've never done anything of that caliber. I haven't been talked to by the police. I'm not a sinner. I don't have sin. So that was probably the biggest thing in evangelism, where instead I can go to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 3 circles way of doing evangelism, but we can go to like, why is the world messed up? It's because of people, and because we have selfishness inside us that hurts other people. And the term that I have found resonates a little bit is I guess it's a Shinto term, kegare, which is like a dirtiness in your soul. That in the tradition, like you go to a Shinto shrine, you wash off your hands with water, and that gets rid of the spiritual dirt. So that's a bridge that I've been able to use in evangelism, is saying that we have dirty souls and we can't just wash it off with real water. We need Jesus.
Thanks for sharing. That's a very big thing. Casey?
Yeah, I think I have 2 thoughts. The first one has to do with just like the words that Josiah was talking about. Another word I found is helpful, but I mean, you could speak it in English too, but it's like zureteiru, like it's off balance. So like if there's a photo that's a little bit out of focus, or like if a bone that's out of place a little bit, like I've heard people use that to describe sin as like, this is how it's supposed to be, this is how it is. And like people can kind of resonate with like, oh, the world does feel like it's not how it's supposed to be. COVID's very weird. Why do things like that happen? And that's been an not easier, but a better way to approach sin, I think, when I've been able to talk with people about it. But I think one of my favorite evangelistic things that I've learned is I kind of mentioned this in the training, but like in learning how to talk about who God is, someone like my language teacher went through Genesis with me and like just looked at the verbs that are used to describe God, to explain God to Japanese people and how it's different than Japanese God. So for example, like God spoke, like mountains don't speak, trees don't speak, or God gave names. So God is an affectionate God who's close to his creation. He's not a mountain who doesn't talk. And so like going through even just the entry of of Genesis, and like unpacking what kind of God is, because that's not something I ever thought about, because I grew up in America, went to Catholic school, had always heard about who God is. And so figuring out how to explain it using that first, like the verbs specifically in Genesis, was really helpful.
Oh, great. Well, Britt's asking, what was that word you used? The word unbalanced.
Yeah. Zuretteir.
Hasure?
Zuretteir.
Zuretteir.
I don't know why it's
So
not.
that's a present tense because of deiru.
Mm. I don't know. I'm trying to type it, but it's not working. But Z-U
Mm-hmm.
R-E-T-E-R-U.
Mm-hmm. Someone can type that in. Oh, they're not doing outside. They're just doing unbalanced. Yay, all the people typing Japanese. Everyone needs to learn those Japanese keyboards when you're doing missions to Japan. Ooh, we have a new question. I think you speak English a lot in Japan to communicate with Japanese students. How did you learn Japanese? I'm asking this because many missionaries who went to Japan as an English teacher, and I heard they seldom had an opportunity to learn Japanese. So how did you guys learn
who
Japanese?
wants to go first? Sure.
I can go. So with our terms, it's kind of like we have a limited amount of like budget for language learning, but so I think Josiah did something different, but I meet with a language teacher once a week. And then I also go to a Japanese church. Obviously I'm in Japan, but I think that's been the most helpful thing, is like we have prayer times on the Wednesdays or sharing times after church where I get to practice using the language more. And that's been really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I went to a language school for a term, and I also do regular tutoring. But really the biggest thing is that as a missionary, like the best I can say is you have to make time for it. And it's going to help you both ways too, because I have found personally that as I improve in my Japanese, I also improve in my English teaching ability, because if the person I'm talking to isn't quite getting it, I can try and get around it by saying, oh, it's like this in Japanese.
Mm-hmm. And that's also, since you guys are missionaries, you have a religious worker visa, so you can take time to study. But if you were an English teaching visa, you probably have very little time to go and study on your own, go to class.
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
But then even then, like you'll still have, hopefully under that English teaching, you'll still have some amount of free time, and that'll just be on you. You're going to have to make time if you want to improve the language. Like there is no silver bullet or easy way out. I mean, everyone says Japanese is so hard to learn, and it can be, and it definitely can be at times, but it's by no means impossible. You just need to put in the work to do it.
Mm-hmm. Some people are asking language learning methods. What method did you use, and do you think it was helpful for you?
I studied Japanese as my minor in college, so it helped a lot to have a baseline. And my tutoring once a week has been very unstructured, but well, I shouldn't say unstructured, but my teacher has just been going through like, here's this Bible study, let's do it together, or here's this way, like the Genesis thing, and doing it together. And I do wish, I think that I had a little bit more structure of like, here's a vocabulary you have to memorize for this week. So I've had to be more disciplined in doing that for myself. But I think learning conversationally with my teacher has been helpful, because he even helps me with like, yes, that's correct, but you're saying it with this kind of nuance, because Japanese is a really heavily nuanced language. So you could say technically the same thing, but it has like 10 different ways of being understood. So being able to meet with a native Christian has been really helpful in figuring out how to communicate things correctly.
I guess we have
Oh,
three more questions. Okay. I'm back, yes.
3 more questions. Okay, so I guess we can move on. I don't really have too
Yeah.
much to add to language.
What are some struggles you have encountered when you're sharing the gospel, and how do you deal with it?
I think we've covered one of the big ones, which is getting to the gospel in the first place. Like, a lot of the time, if you try and just suddenly bring up the gospel to someone you just meet on the street, they may run away. But I've found that it isn't so hard once you're building up to it, that you don't need to psych yourself up with a huge amount of courage to share the gospel. If you've been giving this friend that you've been building a relationship with for a month, little pieces at a time, like on the first week you meet this person, this is my testimony, this is something God did in my life. The second time, oh yeah, well, this is what God taught me this week, and this is what tells us who God is. And then the next week, like, oh man, I've been struggling this week, but I know that Jesus has forgiven me and I've turned to him. So as you're giving them like these little pieces of the gospel, then you already have those pieces. And by the time that you give them a full, like at the same time gospel presentation, they've heard all of these individual things. So it's not so hard, and there's less room for them misunderstanding things because you've been over the individual elements before.
Great. Someone's asking about freedom. How do you explain freedom to young people?
That's an interesting question.
I know,
Kacie, you I have an anecdote, but you go ahead if you have something first.
I have no anecdote, so you could take it away.
So there's that passage in John 8 that talks about being a slave to sin. He who is free is free indeed in Christ. And I actually gave a Bible study to the Japanese church that I work with regularly. And out of all of this Bible study series that I've been writing for them in Japanese, that was one of the ones where I could kind of tell like these Christians, longtime Christians, aren't really tracking. So I don't actually know how to properly communicate freedom if that didn't really track through with them. So I may need, or I will need some more wise counsel from my national partners who know better than I do.
That's fine. This should be our last question, unless you guys join us for a time of informal fellowship. So if this is your first time joining us for a Tuesday, it will end in about 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, the recording will stop, but then a lot of us will still be online. Usually about 20 to 25 of us will still be here. Josiah and Kacie said they would graciously join us for about an extra 30 minutes to an hour. But you guys can hear your testimonies and ask more questions there. But our last question for today is about the school system in Japan. Do students get confirmed or admitted to university before senior year of high school? Is this common? You don't know.
I don't know the answer.
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you've got to sit for the entrance exam and get your results before you get admitted.
That, or there's also elevator schools where you go into elementary school, it guarantees you to a middle school, it guarantees you to a high school, and it guarantees you to a college. But that means you just get admitted earlier. So if you get into this high school, you are guaranteed to the college, but that means our high school entering exam was very difficult. So there's those, but that's not common. You just need to know which are the elevator schools. So yes, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for Josiah, Kacie, for everyone else joining us for Training Tuesday. We do have our Fridays, which we're going to have them join us, I think. Are you guys joining us for Fridays? Yes. So on Fridays, they will also share about what they are doing. That way you get to hear about what God is doing through IMB Kobe and pray for them, and maybe more opportunities to see if you guys can join them in the future. Feel free to fill out our surveys. Our surveys are helpful to figure out if this is helpful for you guys, and if there's anything else we can do better. Just ways to connect with us, so you can join us. It's an online chat room that's just online for open for 24/7. You can connect with us. We have some of these resources up that you can check and say, oh, I want to learn about IMB. We have a section for IMB. I want to learn about evangelism. We have some documents and Amazon link for that too. So yes, we have, can I say it again? My internet is a little bit clunky here. So Discord is an online chat room where after this 2 months, You guys can connect there. It's online 24/7. You guys can talk with us, see some of our resources. Like if you want to hear about IMB again, there's a little link that says IMB, what they do, how to reach them, how to connect with them, or evangelism. Here are some documents. Here are some ways to share the gospel. So we're just having those resources out for you guys. And yes, let me just pray to close us out. And that will end our formal time of Training Tuesday. And we'll see some of you guys in 5 minutes. So if you want to take a break, come back in 5 minutes and we'll have a time of fellowship. But let us pray to end this time. Thank you so much. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day to learn about just students, college students specifically in Japan. Thank you that even if it's difficult, even if it's impossible, with you, it is possible. We pray that you will allow us, some of us to learn to share the gospel better and more effectively with some of the students we know. Maybe you're going to call some of us to work with college ministry in the future. I pray that this lesson today was helpful and it will continue to learn, continue to figure out what people need, what people are desiring. Ultimately, there's nothing else that satisfies except you. I pray that you will bless Josiah and Kacie as they plan to serve in Kobe for all the things that they're doing. May you bless their work with college students so that as they do it more and more, they'll be more and more effective too. And that some of us may even join them in the future serving in Kobe. Thank you for this night. Thank you for all the things you've given us. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thank you guys again for joining us. They just posted the email addresses for Kacie and Josiah. If you have more questions and not able to join us during fellowship, or even after this week, if you want to have more questions, just send them an email and they'll be able to answer some of your questions. So that'll be our time of formal Training Tuesdays, and we'll see you guys in a few minutes for a time of fellowship. All right, good night.